PWC sidelines 9 leaders as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese weighs into the scandal-ridden firm. Australia's most popular Premier, Mark McGowan from WA, resigns. And a last-minute intervention in an effort to stop a big jump in HECS bills. It's Tuesday, the 30th of May, 2023. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, your interview today is with someone who's very well known in the business world. You're speaking with Bernie Brooks, the former CEO of Myer and now the chair of ASX-listed Dots Nano.
Yep, it's a great chat with Bernie, all about carbon capture and storage, which has got nothing to do with retailing, let's face it. Anyway, Bernie has a passion for the environment and green energy and the need to actually reduce carbon emissions and reduce carbon from the atmosphere, and that's what this company is all about. A really interesting take on it. They're using a technology that was developed actually in Israel, and they hope to expand it here in Australia. Well worth a listen.
Yeah, it's a really good one. It's coming up a little bit later on, but the main story this morning, Sean, is really, it's a saga that just keeps on going. Embattled consulting giant PWC Australia will put 9 senior partners on leave and ring-fence its federal government advisory business as Prime Minister Anthony Albanese weighs in, calling the scandal a terrible indictment of the firm. Geez, he didn't miss.
No, he didn't. It's a mess. PWC is trying to demonstrate to clients, including the federal government, of course, that it's taking decisive action over its ongoing tax leak scandal. Now, according to the Financial Review, the partners of PWC met yesterday, and during it, the chair, Tracy Kinnair, and its governance board risk chairman, Paddy Carney, stepped down. 2 independent non-executive directors have been appointed to the board. Now, that's the first time you've seen independent, not executive directors at one of these firms' boards. The hope is that the announcement will calm clients, particularly Canberra. For those who haven't been following the story, in short, very much the elevator pitch version here, Michael, dozens of PWC partners received emails related to plans to use confidential government tax policy information to win new clients. That happened quite a few years ago. Anyway, it has evolved into the scandal it is today. Yesterday, Prime Minister Albanese said what went on was totally unacceptable and he wants the list of PWC employees allegedly involved in the tax advice scandal to be made public. Now, federal police are investigating following a referral by the Treasury Department, and recently the Greens sought to release the list of names of employees who had those leaked confidential emails, but Finance Department officials said naming the partners involved in the tax advice scandal could actually disrupt the criminal investigation, so that hasn't happened yet.
Now, Sean, PwC is obviously a giant, right? But I mean, the scale of this issue, of this scandal, is pretty much unprecedented. So I guess the question is, will PwC survive?
It's a fair question. It will probably survive, but in what form? Will it have to separate its audit and consulting business? Will it keep its partners? Will it keep its clients? And I'm not just talking about the government here. There are plenty of stories around at the moment suggesting that corporate Australia isn't happy working with PwC. Could you imagine in some of those firms where the governance expert says to the CEO, "Are we happy working with PwC?" And the CEO says yes. And the audit guy, the governance expert goes, really? Like, I think that a lot of those discussions will be taking place. My best guess is PwC will survive, but it will never be the same.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? When kind of PwC has built its reputation on auditing and governance and all of that, to have this kind of going, this is a saga that we will be talking about for some time.
Yeah, and all these big consulting firms and the audit firms particularly, it's all about integrity. And this just goes to that very point.
All right. Local markets, Sean, what happened yesterday?
It was a much better day with the S&P ASX 200 finishing up 0.9% to 7,217 points. It was higher earlier in the day on the back of relief about the debt ceiling deal announced in the US over the weekend, but then fell back during trading. It was a very broad-based rally with 75% of stocks rising. The notable laggards were tech stocks, which have done very well in recent sessions, so I'm probably not surprised to see them fall back a bit. Not sure that I've seen this before, Michael, but the top 9 companies, so that's the big 4 banks, BHP, CSL, Macquarie Bank, Woodside and Fortescue Metals, all rose more than 1%. There's plenty of corporate news around. AMP jumped after announcing a series of executive changes and saying it's going to dissolve its Australian wealth management structure. Select Harvest climbed also after flagging improved conditions for its 2024 crop. Humm Group jumped 10% after the Australian Securities and Investments Commission revoked the stop order placed on Humm's buy now, pay later subsidiary. It had put that on Friday. That didn't help Humm anyway. It revoked it over the weekend, so its share price jumped. IDP Education, that was the standout. Its share price fell 16% following Canada's decision to allow competitors to enter the student direct stream component of student visas. In short, investors think that's really going to hurt IDP Education's bottom line, and also ALS dropped 4%, even though it said that net profit would be up about 23%.
Ouch. Now, Sean, we're all still waiting to see what happens on international markets.
Yes, I mean, there are holidays in the United Kingdom and on Wall Street overnight, so we don't quite know how equity markets will respond to the debt ceiling solution until tonight at least. One proxy, though, is cryptocurrencies. Now, they always trade. Bitcoin climbed to its highest level in more than 2 weeks yesterday amid a boost to investor sentiment as a result of the debt ceiling deal. It jumped more than 3% yesterday to above $28,000 a unit. Other smaller tokens also did pretty well. Bitcoin's now on a 5-day streak of gains, which is its best since March. Another proxy for risk, of course, is oil. It's also higher, and aren't we seeing it at the petrol bowser? I bring this up because, Michael, I filled up on Saturday, $1.65.9.
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, I was with one of the kids. They went to fill up, $2.05.9, same petrol station.
Oh, a 40-cent jump.
40 cents, yeah, 50-litre tank. Not that I'm counting or anything. What's that? 50-litre tank, 40 cents, $20 extra.
Hang on. When you say it was one of the kids, this is one of your kind of adult kids.
Of course I paid. That's where you go. Of course I paid.
That was where I was going. Surely you could just go, hey, you know what? There's $20 difference here. I think you kind of chip in the balance.
Why is it when you're with the kids in the car and they're driving you, they always find a petrol station?
They couldn't have found it on Saturday when when it was $1.65.
No. Well, obviously they had plenty of petrol, didn't they?
Yeah, of course. Until Dad's in the car and the credit card's in the car.
That's exactly right. And finally, Michael, the Aussie dollar's buying about 65.5 US cents.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the big story in politics, the country's most popular Premier, Mark McGowan from WA, has resigned, saying he wants to be remembered as an achiever and needs to step down before signs of his exhaustion begin showing.
That's right. Yesterday he came and he just said he's tired. He just wants to get out. He is the most popular Premier, at least within their own state, and said it's been an honour and privilege to serve the people of Western Australia. McGowan entered state politics in 1996. He was first elected Premier in 2017. He won a massive victory again in 2021. I might be wrong, but certainly one of the all-time largest victory margins over the coalition. Perhaps he'll be best remembered for how he handled himself and his jurisdiction during COVID. He effectively sealed off the state. He ended up in a legal dispute with Clive Palmer. A lot of businesses were very upset with him because of the way that they couldn't trade across borders. However, Western Australia did pretty well during COVID, at least in terms of health, and certainly the electorate supported what he was doing. There was plenty of plaudits for Mr McGowan yesterday. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese congratulated him on his tenure as the state's leader, saying he improved lives and created progress on social media. Fellow Labor Premier from Queensland, Anastasia Palaszczuk, said it was a pleasure working with McGowan, describing him as tireless.
It is really kind of how you'd want to go out, isn't it? In politics or in business, you kind of want to go out while you're still on top.
Absolutely. And he said yesterday he just didn't think he had the energy to keep going. He said that every day he's fighting a battle, which is what leaders of countries and states do. And I think he's just had enough.
And surely any leader who led, whether it's state or federally, through COVID, that would have aged them about kind of 4 years for every one.
Yeah, I admire, whatever side of politics they're in, the good ones really do dedicate their lives to public service, and I admire it totally, and it must be an incredibly difficult and worrying and ageing job.
Yes, indeed. All right. Now, Sean, the chief executive of low-cost airline Jetstar, Stephanie Tully, has blamed, quote, unique supply chain issues for its ongoing problems and apologised to customers.
Don't you like that? Unique supply chain issues.
I'd love to know more about these unique supply chain issues.
Yes, yeah, exactly. She also promised a return to pre-pandemic service standards by the middle of 2023. She said fixing the operational performance of the Qantas subsidiary was her main priority. The airline cancelled 1 in every 12 flights last month, and more than 40% of its flights experienced delays when the industry average is closer to 30%. 40% is bad, industry average 30. Don't think that's so good either, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, Ms. Tully said bringing forward check-in times, things like that, were helping improve performance, although the more significant factor was supply chain bottlenecks holding up critical mechanical fixes. And Michael, because I know you love planes.
I do.
Yes. So Tully yesterday was next to the outgoing Qantas Chief Executive Alan Joyce. They were farewelling the group's final Boeing 717 aircraft.
Oh.
It's been in service for 19 years. It's been sold to a North American carrier. There you go.
Oh, I suppose remember when Qantas retired its last 747?
Yes.
And that was very dramatic, and there was all the kind of the flybys and all of that kind of thing. They managed to sneak this one out fairly quietly, didn't they?
Yeah, well, yeah. So I think the 717 isn't quite the 747 though.
I know, but I think every aircraft needs a proper send-off, Sean. Financial Services Minister Stephen Jones says the government is looking to partner with private companies to build disaster resilience and improve the affordability of insurance. That's a big one.
Yeah, speaking at the Actuaries Institute conference in Sydney yesterday, he said that as climate change worsens, it's Australians least able to afford insurance that are suffering most from natural disasters. He also called on the insurance industry to up its game on recognising clients' work to minimise the risk of damage to their homes. He said by doing this, insurers can play in helping address underinsurance, non-insurance and the affordability of protection.
Defence Minister Richard Marles has rejected claims Australia is scaling down the support it's been giving Ukraine's defence forces.
Marles said the federal government is delivering the military assistance it's announced for Ukraine on the timeline it's set, and Australia stands shoulder to shoulder with a European nation. Australia is providing training assistance primarily to Ukraine. That's been ramped up since the beginning of the year. Marles said Australia is working closely with Ukraine, but he wouldn't comment on speculation that Canberra will soon provide additional military support.
Now, Sean, our sister podcast, How Do They Afford That, with Canna Campbell, the founder of Sugar Mama TV, comes out every Wednesday. But the current episode that's available is all about HECS debts and basically what to do about kind of skyrocketing HECS debts that are actually growing quite quickly now after such a long period where they didn't move much at all. Because from this week, about 3 million people will start getting higher HECS bills. And the latest development on that is that crossbench MPs are pushing the Albanese government to intervene.
So the indexation of university debt repayments is tied to inflation, and the higher rate kicks in from June 1, Thursday. Increased repayments on the Higher Education Loans Program debts will average $1,769 a year when the 7.1% indexation kicks in. The debts don't attract interest, but they are indexed to inflation based on the Consumer Price Index. Last year, for example, the hike was nearly 4%. Several crossbench MPs have now come out and written to the Prime Minister and Minister for Education, Jason Clare, about it, saying larger debts take much longer to pay off and student debt is becoming a lifelong burden for too many. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've got anyone in your household or if you are kind of paying off a HECS debt, Sean, that episode of How Do They Afford That is definitely worth a listen. Canna has a really interesting take on it all. In international news now, Sean, Turkey's President Recep Erdogan has extended his rule into a third decade, comfortably beating his rival in an acrimonious runoff election.
Erdogan had secured about 52.1% of the vote, with almost all the counting complete, according to Turkey's election board. The runoff victory caps an extraordinary campaign for Erdogan, who went into this election cycle at his most vulnerable since he first became Turkey's leader back in 2003. The country is gripped by an acute cost of living crisis. The opposition was much better organised than normally. In fact, there was a real chance that Erdogan wasn't going to win. And Sunday's second-round vote was billed as a referendum on Turkey's future. Exactly 100 years after the republic was founded by Ataturk, Erdogan won.
Sean, Russian forces pounded Ukraine's capital Kyiv yesterday in what local officials described as the largest kamikaze drone attack since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of the country 15 months ago.
Officials said Ukraine's air defence systems had downed 58 of 59 incoming drones launched against Ukrainian targets, with 40 downed in Kyiv alone. The attack came as the city prepared for the annual Kyiv Day celebrations held to mark its founding. Now, it was the 14th air attack on the capital since the beginning of May. The engines of the drones apparently were audible following the air raid sirens, followed by the sound of machine gun fire, surface-to-air defence systems, and fighter jets seeking to intercept them. Officials reported damage across the capital city.
All right, one more to finish off on, Sean, and I think this week is fast becoming the week of unusual stories. Oh, no, I didn't think you could top yesterday's effort, because we started the week with the Indian food inspector who had a dam drained, I think it was, so that he could find his phone that he dropped into the water while he was taking a selfie. Now, this story, a nun has moved a step closer to sainthood after her exhumed body showed no signs of decay 4 years after it was buried.
So pilgrims are now flocking to Missouri in the US to see the impeccably well-preserved body of Sister Wilhelmina Lancaster, according to the Daily Telegraph of London. Sister Wilhelmina, the founder of the Benedictine Sisters of Mary, Queen of the Apostles in Missouri, died at age 95 in May 2019. Now, she was buried without being embalmed in a cracked wooden coffin, which exposed her body to moisture. When her remains were exhumed on May 18 this year, 4 years later, to be moved to the monastery chapel that was intended to be her final resting place, the Benedictine sisters expected to find bones. However, the sisters instead found an intact body and habit, according to the Catholic news agency. According to the sisters who witnessed the exhumation, is that the word? Exhumation? Hard word to say that, isn't it?
It is a tough one.
Yeah. Anyway, people who witnessed digging her up, the ribbon, crucifix and rosary were all intact, as was the veil, while the body was unchanged. Now, the lining of the coffin had disintegrated. You know about this story? It's a cracker. I do get it. But you've just, little faith. I don't know. All the sources from this seems to be part of the community of Sister Wilhelmina. But I'd like to see a bit of independent verification.
Oh, really? You're suggesting there's
maybe that's unfair.
A little bit of creative kind of retelling of the story.
You know, when you're a journalist for a long time and stuff happens, you just think, so the guy that drained the Indian dam, I kind of got that right from the get-go. This is from the Daily Telegraph of London. That is a very, very reputable paper. So we're being serious here. But you just wonder.
Yeah. But you know what it does for me, though, Sean? It makes me realise that you are putting yourself under enormous pressure to top this. You had the bloke with the dam being drained yesterday. True. Now you've got the nun kind of in impeccable condition 4 years after death. What can you possibly come up with tomorrow that is going to top these two?
Well, something that we will all be looking forward to.
Oh, yeah. I will be listening. I mean, obviously I'll be listening because I'm here every day, but I will be paying close attention for once. Now, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Bernie Brooks, former CEO of Myer, now the chair of ASX-listed Dots Nano.
Yes, all about carbon capture and storage, a long, long way from Myer. Bernie has a real interest in the energy transition and the role that carbon capture and storage can play. Have a great chat to him about that. Well, worth a listen, I say.
Yeah, I agree. It's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 30th of May, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And Sean, tomorrow we need to have a Mia, a most enthusiastic advocate. We haven't done it for about a week. It just keeps slipping my mind. So if you want to nominate yourself for our Mia, a most enthusiastic advocate, basically a Fear and Greed super fan who tells other people to listen, jump onto social media, jump onto our website, fearandgreed.com.au, but any of those social media platforms and let us know. And we will be awarding a Mia tomorrow. Make sure you stay up to date on all the business news as well with Alexa and your Amazon Echo smart speaker. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode, and you can grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.